This is contacts in our.
Need that one.
No,
Okay.
I'm not up here yet.
Oh, you're not? Oh, I didn't even look.
Oh.
All right, while you're putting them up there, somebody start with your big win for the week. Win.
Oh, win. Well, I think it's a win. So I had a lead and I talked to her and then I scheduled a meeting. Well, I called, she didn't answer. I sent a couple, messages, didn't answer. I finally called about a week. The other day, I waited about a week and I finally got a hold of her and she said she's also been talking with another realtor. I thought, uh-oh. So I was like, how am I going to reel this one in? Just talking to her. I know she was very, very big on her credit score, the financing, the process. I thought, if you come be a Keller Williams client, we have a mortgage, kind of giving her all that. She goes, really? Oh, okay. So I did get an appointment with her and her husband for Wednesday.
Nice.
So I thought I lost that one, but I got it back. So I thought that was a win for me.
Definitely. That's a big part of it is identifying what is important to them and then answering that need. So that's adding value, right? If you answer their needs, that's adding value.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, win.
I don't think I had anything.
Yeah, no, that
found in my property.
Not yet.
Oh, you're going to look tomorrow, right?
We're just going to look at it. So I guess that's the biggest thing I have showing.
that's a win.
Works.
Other than your ceiling contract.
I didn't really have anything.
You
real
did
estate. Everything
too.
kinda got put on-
She's setting up smart plans. Tell
I
them
am
about your
just setting
smart
up
plans. So you're
I'm
using
not finished, so it's not a win yet.
it is a win because you have the
Just gotta
acknowledgement.
get there.
You have the acknowledgement that the leverage is important.
Exactly.
And
I did
smart
have that.
plans will take, if you set up smart plans to make your contacts, that is going to free up your time to do other lead gen activities, whether it's for your real estate business or your other business.
Right. I did have, so yesterday I put an ad up that I had the list of open houses. You mentioned that in the thing last week. So in like the Greenwood community group. And then I had probably 5 or 6 people message me, hey, can I get that list? So I did that. And then I put them on a smart plan. And then it reminds me every Thursday afternoon to pull the list of open houses for that weekend and then send to those people. So I did get that set up yesterday. And so it had quite a few, nobody's like in the, hey, I'm looking right now, but they're just kind of just starting their search, but they got stuck in my nurture. And
So back to Angie's win. Angie's win is somebody I have been nurturing for 16 months who would not talk to me with, we've had this conversation about car. Everybody's heard my lecture about how I shop for cars, right? Same thing. She didn't want to talk to me. She wasn't ready. Now they're getting close to where they're going to be ready because their lease is coming up, right? Or
She
something.
said, no, she's working on it. She went to get her credit
Oh,
score.
she was working on her
700,
credit.
Which is the end of this month. She said, hoping the beginning of next
So the
month.
last thing she wanted to do was call me and tell me her credit score was low and she was working on it, right? That's allowing me to peek behind the curtain. That's private.
Right.
You don't want people to know you have bad credit. I mean, most people don't. So so she wasn't ready to talk to me. These people aren't ready, but when they're ready, if you keep adding value and giving them something that they're looking for, then they're eventually going to be ready, and then they're going to talk to you. The statistics, I love that. Statistics. Now I'm short a copy.
Nick and I can share.
Okay.
Yeah, we can share.
I knew if I either I knew whatever I did, I was either gonna have too many or not enough. It's in your Google Drive too. Everybody has it. So be sure to put the number of contacts on the board while we're talking. But no, that's awesome because that's the statistics. So I don't know what the statistic is. It's a 50% or 70% or 88% or whatever it is. Somebody said this week 75% of all statistics are made up. Crack me up. But the point is that a large majority of people will work with when they're ready to work. They're going to work with the realtor that most recently contacted them. So you either have a shot at guessing or you consistently contact them so that when they're ready, you've been the one that gets that nod. So that's what that is. Big win, Brian.
2 new clients. One of them is a couple that is in the military in Colorado Springs.
Awesome.
So
Sorry.
they're moving here in December. So I'm going to be
Oh, yeah,
on the hunt for them while they're out of town.
Awesome.
I'm doing some virtual showings that way. They might be able to come visit, not sure, but either way, looking forward to
Very
that.
cool.
And then a gentleman that I was given as a lead, I don't know, maybe back in March, maybe, finally got approved for financing. And so I told him we have an appointment, but I decided to wait till next week. So I was sure that I was clear. And so I'm meeting with him on Monday.
Awesome. And your Carmel folks?
We had a visit this week. He's a little disgruntled at the market and, you know, things that we just sort of keep seeing. So we're still rolling that.
Okay. Ryan, when?
Well, I got one client that's going to be contacting Tim soon. He's kind of dragging his feet a little bit. He's worried about his credit score, but he's just going to pull up all that paperwork and all that kind of stuff again, W-2s, and so he's kind of.
Well, he can find out what his credit score is, and Tim told you that his threshold is 600. So.
And according to he sent me a screenshot of his app, he's at like 651 according to the app. He doesn't know what his FICO is, but you know, I
It's
assume
gonna
that's
be pretty
probably high.
close. Yeah. Do you have the credit sheet that I've sent out to everybody to give as value? Because it's got some links on there for other places that they can get a free credit score. My son is actually working on getting all that in a Google Drive, so you guys don't have to keep trying to find things in your email. But that's another resource for that.
I haven't heard back from Betty yet.
No.
I sent her an email yesterday afternoon,
You have
or
to-
well, kind of morning-ish.
You got her on the phone before, right? So you have to call
So I had her on the phone, and you know, I told her I'd be in touch about. She said this week was bad for scheduling appointments, so you know, I said I'd send her some properties I found in the area she was looking for. So I sent her, you know, like a link to one, and you know, put in there that you know I was free this weekend or sometime during the evening next week. But I haven't.
Yeah, you probably want to call her. You have to be the one driving the bus.
Right. Yep.
Jay, big win.
I had a few, I think.
Okay.
I had a few people that I've been talking to over the last year or so who are starting to get approved or get ready for a loan to buy a house. And the girl the other day said she was actually ready, so I sent her Tim's information, and Tim hit her back, and she's actually ready to move forward.
Awesome. Yay.
That was just one.
That's
And another
awesome.
one, two people, same name, both of them ready to do the same thing. So,
Fabulous.
2 Adrians. So
That's
that was-
fun.
That's kind of
That's fun. Then you have to name them. You're going to have to give them other names. They're going to have nicknames, or you're not going to remember which one is which.
So one's AB and one's AD.
Hopefully they're not looking in. Hopefully they're not looking in the same area. They're going to be fighting over houses too.
So that's kind of cool.
All right. So before we do challenges, I want to know how many people you talked to this week about Tim's program.
I missed an opportunity to, so but I will talk to when I talk to him on Wednesday after this.
All right. I'm going to challenge you guys. You guys need to make 5 phone calls a day next week to someone in your database and tell them about Tim and his program. Because like I mentioned to you last week, if you don't, you're just walking away from business. Because I have given you somebody that can help everyone in your database or someone they know. Every person in your database, I guarantee, knows somebody who could benefit from Tim's program.
Did you email that information? Because I wasn't here last week, so I don't know what
There-
or his program.
There is a link. I emailed a link that was the video of his presentation
Okay.
along with all of the materials that he provided.
Okay.
So that should be in your email from, I think I sent that last Saturday afternoon. Last Saturday's a little bit of a blur for me, and I apologize. I was way off my game last Saturday, but I'm pretty sure if I didn't send it Saturday, I sent it Sunday, and I know it's there because I forwarded it to Rhonda sometime this week. So But that is, I mean, there is no reason. You guys should each be able to get at least 3, if not 5 or 10 pieces of business from that. I have done 10 deals with him this year, and I have 6 in my pipeline right now that are working with him. So everybody, I promise you, every person, all those numbers that you have up there, every one of those people can either benefit from his program or knows somebody who can. So that is, right now, that is probably, and Jay's jumped all over it, that is probably your best source of potential future revenue. Just easy, quick future revenue. And we were talking about this earlier, even if they can't, even if their credit score isn't 600, you've got the materials to help them get their credit score to 600. Just continue to stay in touch with them. You can even offer to sit down and go through a budget with them, come up with a debt reduction program. You guys can do that. I've got spreadsheets for that. If you find somebody that needs that kind of help and you want to help them, let me know. I'll give you those spreadsheets. You can set them. We all have budgets, right? We all keep our own profit and loss statements. We can figure out how to get somebody to pay off their credit card debt. It's not rocket science. There's spreadsheets for that, you know, that somebody else smarter than me put together. So that's my charge to you, because I'm telling you, if you guys want to earn money, that is how you're going to make money. And it's an easy conversation. Anybody have a problem having that conversation? Do you know what that conversation sounds like? Oh my gosh, I was in training last Saturday and a lender came in and he has the most amazing program. I can't wait to tell you about it. It is no down payment. It's for first-time home buyers or somebody who really wants to move into an area that, even if they've owned another home, they want to get into an area that's an up-and-coming area. Is that you, or do you know anybody that would benefit? Pretty easy conversation, right? So, you know, and he's easy, right, Jay?
Very easy.
I mean, it's no heavy lifting. That's all you have to do. That phone call will earn you $4,500 every time you make that phone call, pretty much.
I will say I get a little bit of practice because every day I go into work, I almost talk to the same people almost. So I get a little bit more hyped up every day. So I tell them, and then they start believing it more and more every time I tell them. So it's kind of like repetitious, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it. The more you have the conversation, the easier it is for you to have the conversation. I can whip it out like this because I've had a conversation so many times. But it becomes an easy conversation. But the truth of the matter is, does everybody agree it's a pretty awesome program?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Does everybody agree that you have first-time home buyers in your database, or you know somebody in your database that knows somebody who's never bought a home before? And 600 is not that high of a threshold for a credit score, because 640 is where we are for every other program, right? So there really isn't any reason why that won't get you business, except for the only reason. What's the one reason why that won't get you business?
Not making the calls.
Exactly. That's the only reason this won't get you business, is if you don't make the calls. All right. Second thing, how many people practiced this week their first call script for the Facebook leads? Only one person practiced. You got to practice that. You have to practice that conversation. You don't want these. Those leads. I haven't put the ad out because I wanted to have this conversation with you guys before I did. But how are you going to make that first call if you haven't practiced it and you don't feel comfortable making that first call? How's that going to feel when I send you the lead and you know that you've got to call them and you've not practiced how to call them? Okay. Right. So please today find some time, because I'm going to run the ad tomorrow.
And that is, you said that through the email or something?
No, that's the conversation we talked about. It's the LP Mama that I sent you again. But it's basically, hey, I thank you for reaching out on my Facebook. How can I help you? I mean, that's the conversation, right? How can I help you? You know, I'm going to send you the property that I send on the ad. So you're going to know which property it is that they clicked on. But that doesn't mean that's the property it's not a matter of, oh yeah, I decided I didn't like that property. Okay, thanks. And then hang up the phone. That's not the point of this conversation, right? This is the bait on the end of the hook. So what you're going to do is you're going to call and you're going to say, hey, thanks for reaching out on Facebook. I'm so excited. Are you currently looking to buy a home? How can I help you? You know, and then go through the LP Mama piece. So practice LP Mama, and that way you can get that conversation. All right, challenges for the week. All right, Angie, you get to start.
Well, the client I've been working with for a while, the family, she called me one day and I could tell something was wrong because she's my friend as well. So I knew something was wrong. She called me, she goes, Angie, do you care if we talk to another agent to sell our house?
All right, stop there for a minute. Answer that question.
No.
Do you care?
Oh, yes, I do care.
Do you care? Isn't that a funny way to phrase a question? Do you care if we take $6,000 out of your pocket? You know, isn't that a funny question?
That's a funny question. It was very hard for her to even say it on the phone.
Okay, so go ahead.
So, you know, I've learned a lot with this deal. I really, really have. And
So what is your first learning opportunity here? What did you not do that precipitated this call?
did not get a contract signed, a listing agreement signed. I have the buyer's side signed because we've been focused. It's just, this whole thing's been kind of unorganized, but I'm getting there. We've got the buyer's side. So I do have the buyer's side signed. And so I did not get the other side, the listing side.
So the lesson there for everyone is that if you have a buy and a sell and they want to get out and look and see what's out there before they list, go ahead and get the listing agreement signed as well. Just say, let's get all the paperwork. This is easy. This is not about, you don't tell them, oh, I need to protect my interest. You just say, hey, let's get all the paperwork done now and out of the way because nobody likes paperwork. So let's get that all done. Here's all the paperwork we're going to sign. They're going to just sign the paperwork. They want to go look at houses, right? They're going to sign the paperwork. If you haven't decided what it should be listed for, just put to be determined. And in the listing, in the further conditions, put, you know, list price and a list date to be determined at a later date, right? Then you have a listing agreement. You have an exclusive right to list that property. We don't know what the price is yet. We don't know when we're going to list it yet, but you have it. Brian, you have any idea how many listing agreements do you think that Becky has signed that aren't currently listed? I know she's got listing agreements signed for September, October, where they're not ready to list until September or October, but they're under contract with her. If they tell you they're not going to sell until September, are you going to wait and see how many other realtors can get in touch with them between now and September? Or are you going to say, let's just get the paperwork out of the way? All right, go ahead. So
she just asked. And so I would totally, at first, because I'm friends with her, at first I was like, that's the decision you'd like to make. I said, I did kind of have the conversation with her. It's going to be a little harder to get everything in line, but if you feel that you want to do that, I can't stop you from doing that. It will be hard feelings for me because she is my friend. So then I called later, after that phone conversation, I called a little later. I said, listen, just give me a chance. I haven't even tried to look at, try to see what we can do for your house. And she goes, well, the reason we want to, there's a lot of conversations in between, I'm trying to make it small. The reason we want to go with this other realtor is because he knows the area. I'm like, well, she got me on that one, but I didn't let her know about that. Because he may know the area, I don't know. And she goes, so then she finally told me the real reason why she did this. The real reason was they're moving all in together and the husband is not really wanting to do this, I don't think. And he doesn't feel like he's getting any wins. And he didn't tell her up front he wanted to work with this agent because that agent had sold his parents' house. So she felt if they did this, he would feel like he got a win out of it. So after talking to, Carla a little bit, and I talked to her last night, and I told her this, I said, you know what, there's no hard feelings here. If this is something that would make your husband feel more comfortable about this, please, by all means, go ahead and talk to the other agent. Just know I'm still here. I'll be here if it doesn't, because she says they're not set at it, talking to the other guy.
And you did let him know that there was some concerns.
I did.
Because
I
you
said-
got to throw the homeless thing out there, right? If there's two
Yes.
agents, the coordination of this perfect dance is going to be very challenging.
Yeah.
So you could end up being homeless. And that's what really worries me is I don't want to not be able to coordinate this because I'm not in charge of both pieces of it. Because this is a sell, a buy, and a move like that has to time out perfectly. So it's not the best situation to have two different agents involved.
It's not, but in the end of the day, she had been crying for multiple days about this. I said, listen, this is okay. It's fine. Please stop crying about it, So in the end of the day, she felt better. And, and that may come back to me because I was willing to give up.
It will come back to you. It's not a may. It will come back to you. You may not recognize it in the moment, but it will come back to you some way. But it's the right thing. Well, I think, if you take all the things that she's told me, he doesn't want to move. And so he's just throwing up roadblocks and roadblocks and roadblocks. He wants to do like $50,000 worth of renovations to the house so that they can get the maximum price of it. It's just like he doesn't want to move. And they go out to look at houses and she'll ask him, well, what do you think of this? It doesn't matter. It's whatever they want, so he's just got this. So this is probably a good strategy on the wife's part. She's probably been handling her husband for a long time. so, but it's unfortunate and it's painful. And it's painful to have a conversation, but it's nothing personal. And that's the thing that's really, I think, the biggest lesson out of all of
And
that.
that's what to her, it was personal because we're friends.
Yeah.
I go, you need to understand this will never come between our friendship ever.
Yeah.
I will never let that
Business
happen.
and friendship is
Yeah.
two different
Yeah.
things.
So she's feels better and now she goes, I don't have to cry anymore. I'm like, please don't cry.
Yeah.
Please
So-
don't cry.
It's a sad story.
It is very sad.
Challenge, Nick.
I guess finding the right property for my client, because I can't seem to find 20 acres that he likes. It's not zoned badly for him. So, yeah, I guess that's it.
Well, my theory on that is it must not be the right time for him because when it's the right time for him, the right property will show up. So you just have to keep looking and continue to show him that you're looking. So sometimes it's like, I know this isn't exactly what you were looking for, but do you want to look at this? Just so that he knows even if nothing's coming on, that fits the bill for my buyers, then I'll send other things and I'll always preface it by saying, I know this isn't what you're looking for, but I just wanted you to see what's out there because I'm not finding anything yet, that was what you wanted. So Miranda, challenge. Then I can do your win.
No, mine kind of go together though, I guess.
Okay, well, give
So,
us both. Sorry about that.
I talked to somebody about listing a property and they haven't had anything signed, but they said I could list it, but it's in Brown County. So I talked to Rhonda yesterday on the broker hotline, just to try to figure out like the comps in the area for them. It's on 5 acres and it needs a lot of work. And they were between like listing it right now and needing a lot of work because the son lives in New York, but he's visiting and it's the mom's house. And like doing a bunch of work and listing it in the spring. So I think they're good with just listing it kind of as is right now, but it's just like probably not the best first property to try to.
It is the best
Compare
first
it,
property
yes.
because it's going to be a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Also look at Shelley and Kayla Johnson. They've got 2 properties down in
Okay.
Brown County that are listed.
Like on the Facebook page searching Brown County and found, Rhonda said there were some agents and she's from Brown County, which I didn't know.
Yeah.
And my parents live there, so I at least kind of know.
And the other thing is that Sherry, that is part of the Capper group, she's in Bloomington.
Oh, okay.
So that she might be a resource too, because the problem is there's 2 MLSs. There's the multiple listing service that we have, right? The BLC, the MIBOR, and then there's the Indiana Regional, and it's $50 a month. I've joined it twice because I had someone looking in Bloomington and I wanted to have access to the Bloomington listings. And the problem with like Brown County or even up like where Lake Lemon is, depending on who lists it, if it's a MIBOR member, they're going to put it in MIBOR, and if it's a Indiana Regional, they're going to list it in the Indiana Regional, and there's no reciprocity between the 2. So Sharon, that's her name. Sharon Shilley has, she's in Bloomington, so she has the Indiana Regional access. So that would be another option to see if she would pull for you any comps. Exciting.
Yeah.
How was your for sale by owner open house?
So I'm meeting with them today, and I need to ask you about that paperwork to have them sign, and then they want to do the open house next.
Okay. So there, you guys know that in the IAR forms, there's a form for sale by owner. So if you take a buyer to see a for sale by owner, you want to get, and the seller has said they will pay a buyer's agency, you get this 1-page real simple form signed that is a contract, so you're sure that you get paid. She's going to do an open house for a for sale by owner, so she needs to get that same thing signed in case she would happen to snag a buyer for them. Now the reason you have an open house for sale by owner is why? Is it to sell the for sale by owner's home, or is it to get buyer leads? Buyer leads. But you might accidentally sell the for sale by owner home, so you need to have the agreement signed. You don't have the agreement signed and you get the buyer and then you don't get paid at closing. It's your fault because you didn't get the agreement signed.
So did you contact the for sale by owner and offer to do an open house for them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're friends, and I offered just to list it, but the husband is pretty set on not.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, I could do an open house and tell the Facebook group, tell all the other Keller Williams agents, and
you can't get it on the multiple listing service, but you can get it on KW Rockstars, and you can also get it on KWC because it's up in Guys. So I told her, did you find KW Citywide, or do I need to send you that?
I need to look for that, yeah.
Let me make myself a note that I need to send you an invitation. Is everybody on KW Citywide?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna send everyone an invite for KW Citywide. If there happens, another thing that's really good about KW Citywide is if there happens to be an area where you'd really like to work that's not on the south side, and you want to do open houses, like let's say you want to break into the luxury market. I mean, we have some luxury market down here, but let's say you wanted to break into the luxury market. The best place to probably break into the luxury market is Carmel, Fishers, Geist area. You can go to KW Citywide to find open house opportunities. So, awesome. Ryan, win.
Win or challenge.
We already did challenge.
We did.
No.
Did we do
Otherwise-
challenge? Oh, we did win. Challenge. Gosh, I guess I'm not on it today either. Challenge.
Let's see. Challenge.
Yes, your win.
Well, I guess with all this going on, I kind of figured out I don't even have the email signature set up on some of this stuff. So that's kind of been my challenge, I guess. Getting past those little tiny hurdles before I can move on to the next thing.
You don't have to get through those hurdles to move on to the next thing.
Oh, well, I was just typing it in, so we'll figure
You
it out
can
eventually.
keep typing it in, or you can type it in once and copy it and make that a temporary signature.
Yeah.
You know, an email signature is something that I would do sitting in front of the TV when I'm not really working. But do not replace lead gen time with email signatures.
Mhm.
You know, that's
Just
not
little stuff, I guess.
the little stuff isn't money making stuff. You need to make sure that if you're, especially when you're dual career, you have a limited amount of time to work, and you need to make sure that the amount of time that you're working is actually money producing.
Yeah, that's
and
where I get frustrated.
Email signatures is not money producing unless you're getting paid to make email signatures. All right.
Going to what someone else said was finding property for this family that I'm working with, because they are seemingly fine with being homeless. Because we are closing on the sale of their house at the end of this month. And they're moving down the street with friends of theirs to live in their basement. They can't decide if they want a property, that some land that they want to build a house on, or we're also going to look at houses, but they're very particular about how the backyard is. I'm like,
The last name's not
Okay.
work, is it? Because that really sounds like my
No.
challenge this week.
It's not.
But here's the great thing. Once they're living in someone else's basement, the pain may override, and they may quickly figure out what it is that they want.
Yeah.
So that is one possible perk there. So I would probably be asking questions after they've moved into the basement. So how's the basement working out for you? You know,
Oh, yeah.
you know, do you get good daylight in? You know, like
I live in someone's basement. It's terrible.
Coincidentally, you had asked, does anyone know about a barn dominium. That very day, that family had found a barn dominium in Martinsville, and we went down there and looked at it. And they were actually going to potentially buy it with another family. They ultimately decided not to, of course, because they can't decide what they want. But I was like, I'd never heard of that before. And on the same day,
Yeah.
having,
it's all the rage now.
yeah, it was cool.
It's like a timeshare. Is that what it is? Like a
No, it's like
shared-
a pole barn that's converted
Yeah.
into a house that you can live in and make it as nice as you want inside, but outside it appears to be a barn.
And you
Yeah.
can make the outside.
Yeah, you can,
There's
yeah.
It goes from one extreme to the next. Like that's
Okay.
what we're doing. So we're going to build the pole barn, and then it's going to be a pole barn. It's a pole barn home.
So they were going to
Yeah,
buy
that's
with
what I'm
another
building out
family
my
then. That's where you
family.
lost me. So they were going to, 2 families were going to live in it?
The family, they're moving into their basement. They had talked about possibly buying this thing because there's 3 separate living units in this humongous
Oh,
barn.
okay.
In addition to a huge garage, actually like 2 of them, and a pool.
Huh.
And it was great. It's 13 acres.
You know, that would really ruin my mom saying whenever I left the door open, was I born in a barn?
Yes, it would.
I just got one from I helped my parents build one, and they love it.
But finding people to finish the inside is a hard thing. They have to take over, which is why when I'm building mine down there, I'm acting as the general contractor for it to facilitate all of that. There
Well-
aren't people that do that. They do the barn, and then you have to have a
Yeah.
contractor, and then your cost is over what a stick-built house would be.
Yeah.
So
So I can see that. I mean, I for the longest time I had a dream book and it was a post and beam house, which isn't that much different than a barn. So I guess I can see that.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's
Oh,
cool.
it's all over Facebook. They have
I'll have to-
all
I'll
have to
over
look
the
that
place.
up.
All over the place.
they're awesome.
I'm actually about to start one.
That's what he
Oh, that's what
does.
you do?
I built
Yeah.
them,
Yeah, awesome. All right.
Okay, we're gonna talk later.
Challenge.
Kind of the same thing. I have some people who are looking for pretty unique properties, and then I will deliver them that property on a silver platter. And then it's like, well, but what about this? Do you think I can get more on this? I'm like, well, in your price point, this is perfect. This is the perfect thing for you. Why are you not jumping right now? And yeah, so it's just been kind of a struggle with that. Just change people not knowing what they want. Well, they think they want this, and then when I deliver it to them, then that's not what they want. And after
Well,
we've spent weeks and weeks trying to find this perfect property.
And that's part of the struggle. And then there's, so I was kind of on the fence because I definitely don't want to sell somebody something that isn't what they want, right? But you also have to create some sense of urgency. And that's why I mentioned the pain points, because some people will sit in limbo for a really long time, and really it's out of fear, or it's out of a lot of different things. It's no different than Angie's husband that, really isn't on board with this deal, but he doesn't want to say what he's not on board with. There's all kinds of reasons. So it's really good to figure out what the pain points are, because people will move faster to get away from pain than to move towards pleasure. Just a fact, a psychological fact. So if you could ask enough questions to find pain points, that then you can point out the pain points, like, so how much daylight do you get in that basement that you live in? That kind of thing. Isn't it a little chilly down there? My basement's a lot colder than my upstairs because the air conditioner runs, and then it's cooling like a 50 degree, 60, already cooler.
Yeah.
It's so cold in my basement. There's questions like that, just to put that thought in their
I think
mind.
too, it's hard knowing, especially because a couple of these buyers it's a pretty large chunk that they're wanting to pay for a property. So I think it's hard to pull that trigger as fast as they have to because they're gone. Lady called you, she's like, hey, I found this one. I like it. Let's go see it Tuesday. And while I was talking to her, I went back in and it said they had updated that they had multiple offers, that they were making a decision on Sunday. She's like, so what do we do? I'm like, you just can't see it if you're not, they're in Michigan. So they're selling a house up there and then coming down here.
But you could always do a virtual for them.
Yeah.
And there is
Well,
a
they
form.
would never make that decision.
And there
on
is
the
a form.
virtual.
Well, there is a form though. So the IAR has a form that you can make an offer on a property that you haven't seen, and it creates a second contingency or another contingency.
Yeah.
So there is a Now, it might be a problem in a multiple offer
Yeah,
because
see,
it creates another
yeah.
contingency, but there is other options for that. All right, Jay, challenge.
Same thing, trying to put all the systems to work in order and still lead generate. So since I got so many things, not so many things, but things going on, trying to make sure that I'm following up with these people I have been following up, and then put them in the KW system and make sure that I stay on top of that. So that's my challenge, just being a little bit more organized with the whole system.
And if you go back to the very beginning, and I know we've all pretty much had this conversation about setting your schedule, right? So when you set your schedule and then you time block, which was in day 5 of the week I was on vacation, and your goal setting emails, there is a whole section with Ben Kinney talking about time blocking. So I agree, it's a challenge. Those little Mickey, that's where you need to hurry up and sell a bunch so you can get an admin that takes care of all that stuff for you. Or Brian has an admin that takes care of all this stuff for him, right? On a team, don't you? They don't
Not
take
to
care
that
of it.
extent. But
No? Okay. I thought that's what you got. Anyway, well, you don't have to do transaction coordination though.
Right.
That's a big one. Because then you're going to have that too to add in the mix. But set your time block. So let's say 2 hours I'm going to lead gen, and then an hour I'm going to do follow up, and then an hour I'm going to do admin stuff, which might be setting up signature blocks or setting up smart plans or setting up any of those kind of things. So that would be a pretty good part-time plan, right? 2 hours of lead gen, an hour of follow-up, and an hour of admin, and then some time to do showings or appointments, right? So, that would be a pretty good breakup of your time. Now, if you have to shorten that because you have another job or you have other commitments, which of those do you shorten? Which of those do you not shorten? Let's just ask that simple question.
lead gen.
Never. You got to have your lead gen. I mean, I'm excited. At least you guys are starting to say that in unison. So eventually, after you've said it in unison enough times, when you get to the end of the day and you think, ask yourself at the end of the day when you decide you're done, how much lead gen did I do today? And be honest with yourself. Because if you want to make money in this business and you didn't do any lead gen, you are not doing yourself a service at all. All right. I can't believe we don't have any Zoom people today. And I was making sure it wasn't because I don't think it's because I messed up the technology today, because I don't have any text messages telling me that I messed up the technology today. So, all right. So nobody had the challenge today of multiple offers. So I planned the whole workshop today, and then there's no challenge. So nobody had a multiple offer challenge this week.
Not this week. I've had them before.
All right.
Well,
Well,
not really. I mean, I was looking at one and decided not to do it, but that's not the same.
okay. I just have to fix this. I do have a technical difficulty now. I got to figure out how to get to. So Becky, who, if you haven't heard, has 27, maybe 28 pending right now, because yesterday when I was on a call with her at 3:30, she had received an offer on yet another property. So she has 27
That's great.
pending, and I'm assuming they're all listings because she's a listing specialist. So Becky has put together some tips for you guys. I might figure out how to get back to the thing. Oh gosh, that was very hard. So Becky's put together some tips we're going to go through for getting your offer accepted in a competitive market. And then I have some more things to add to that from the buyer side. So Becky's looking at it. Becky's tips, if you figure this out, when we go through Becky's tips, Becky's giving you tips from her perspective, having listed and received multiple offers, and how she helps her sellers decide which offer. And then I have my own tips, because I think I've told you guys all this before, but about a year ago, I was really frustrated because every buyer, it was like 4 or 5 or 6 times I was having to break their heart, and it was really painful for me. So I paid for a couple of classes. And so I'm going to share with you some of the things that I learned in those classes. And then we're going to go through an offer packet so that hopefully you guys feel really, really comfortable when it comes time to make a multiple offer. And I would say one of the most important things is that you have to educate your buyer about this process in the very beginning, because you can't go see a house and then all of a sudden start throwing all these things at them. So you need to have very purposeful conversations if you're if your buyer is looking in an area or a price range that is likely going to be multiple offers. I've been a little surprised right now. Franklin Township is having multiple offers in the $300,000 to $400,000 price point. So, you know, if you have any questions, go look through the last 5 or 6 pendings that come up in the area and go down and read the agent to agent comments, because you're going to see in there multiple offers, highest and best buy in the agent to agent comments. And that's going to let you know, okay, we're probably going to be in a multiple offer situation here. So I need to have this conversation in my buyer's consultation, and every time we see a home, I need to keep this in my buyer's mind, because our buyers want to get a good deal, right? I mean, so the things that we need in a multiple offer situation is contrary to human nature, which is I need to get a good deal, right? So we have to be able to help them through the understanding of what that means in this market without having them go, okay, well, it's a seller's market, so I'm a buyer, it's not my market. Because, you know, it is a buyer's market. Tell me why it's a buyer's market right now. Interest rate. The interest rate is stupid. I checked bankrate.com this week. I checked that, by the way, if you don't, bankrate.com. If you check that, it'll give you the going rate for 30 or 15-year fix. It was 3.19. 3.19. It is a buyer's market. There just isn't an inventory, but it is a buyer's market. That 3.19 will make up for that good deal all day long. You know, Alexis posted on Facebook this week, you know, that she had a buyer that was thinking about waiting until spring. Well, that's a good reason why the buyer shouldn't wait till spring. How long is this going to last? You know, and do the math. Use the mortgage calculator on your phone and do the math. Do the math about what the difference is between a 3.19 and a 4.19 and a 5.19, and tell your buyers, well, you know, if we wait till spring and interest rates, you know, correct, and that it's really just correcting, right? If the interest rate's correct, this same house could cost you this much more per month. The other thing is with the buyers, it's always important to help them understand the difference between paying $125 and $126. We'll go over this in a little bit. You know, it sounds like $1,000, right? That sounds like a lot of money. It's $5 a month. You know, like, is it worth, so I'll say, is it worth $5 to you a month to lose this house? You know, it's just a way to keep perspective in place. But we're going to go through all that. But we're going to go through Becky's first. And we've kind of been talking about her number one, which is setting the expectations. So you have to find out from the lender. You got to talk to the lenders, right? So when they get pre-approved and they send you a pre-approval letter, before you even start looking at houses, call the lender and say, all right, we are going to be in a multiple offer situation here. What is this going to look like? How long are you going to need? Like, is there anything that we can do to speed this process up? Can we shorten closing? Like, not be 45 days. Can we shorten that to 30 days? What can we do? How can we close that gap? That's going to make the offer better, right? Does the lenders, I hate that the lenders do this, but they always suggest that the seller pays closing costs, right? They always put that in there in their email to the client. They set the wrong expectation. Do they really need closing costs, or do they have the cash? Because the lender will know that. Your buyer may not tell you the truth, but the lender will know that, and the lender can tell you, do they really need these closing costs? If they really need these closing costs, we're going to have a big problem, because we're probably not going to be able to win in a multiple. So is this really, really important? And then what's our other option for if they need closing costs? If they're making a down payment, they're not in Tim's program, and they need closing costs, what would we do if they were using, if they came to you with a first option mortgage, saying, and the lender told you that they need $3,000 help in closing costs, what can you suggest to your buyer that they do that would help with that in a multiple offer?
Increase the price of the offer, ask for $3,000.
Well,
Kind of.
that would work, but not really in a multiple offer. That's a really good strategy when we're not in a multiple, but Keller Mortgage, right? Keller Mortgage, no lender fees. That's your closing cost help right there, right? We'll get you in with Keller Mortgage, then you won't be paying the 1% loan origination fees, then maybe you won't need to ask the seller to pay your closing costs, right? So that's something that you have that nobody else can offer your buyers. Make sure they're pre-approved and not just pre-qualified. Make sure they're with a reputable lender. If they come to you with a Quicken Loans pre-qualification letter, this is not going to get you a house. We're going to have to get you with a lender and get you pre-approved. You know the difference between pre-approval and pre-qualification, right? You don't want to deal with Quicken Loans, really.
I think I've heard that several times.
You don't want to deal, I'm telling you what, you don't want to deal with Chase. You don't want to deal with any of the big banks, really. The little banks are fine. First Merchants is great. Union Savings Bank is great. Any of the local lenders is great. But if you have any question, if it's a strange lender you've never heard of, put it out on KW Rockstars and say, does anybody have any experience with this lender? I mean, you need to have everything nailed down before you write a multiple offer. And that's why you have to have these conversations on the front side. And I have a conversation with the lender before I ever start showing houses, so I know exactly what we're gonna have. You're showing a house at 2 o'clock and best and final is due by 4. How are you gonna have that conversation between 2 and 4 and get the offer written and get a good packet put together? So you need to have this all pre-prepared. So we've talked about this a lot, but if they own a home and they have to sell, that is not going to win in a multiple offer. The packet that I'm sharing with you is actually one of the few that I haven't won recently. And the reason why I didn't win it is we had her house pending, but it hadn't closed yet. And so I'm pretty sure that's why we lost out. We lost out to somebody who had no contingency. So other than selling their house and having them be homeless, right? The only real option there is, Tim told us last week that he has a program for it. Union Savings Bank has a program for it. So there's the bridge loans and the blanket loans, and there's a lending distinction between the two. But basically they do an umbrella loan that covers both the house they have to sell and the house they have to buy. And they typically have to have a fair amount of equity and a really high credit score and a really low debt to income ratio to make that work. But there is an option there if it works out for them. She has on here, are they willing to purchase as is? And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. You guys all know my feeling on as is as a listing agent. I don't think the as is offer is in the seller's best interest. So if I were going through multiple offers, I'm probably going to be really skeptical about an as is, because an as is means they can walk no matter what. As soon as they get the inspection report, they can walk, because there's no distinction. You could try to write in some distinction, but that's not the way I usually handle this. Plus, I really don't like my buyers to not get an inspection just in case there is something major. So are they willing to pay, or willing or able really to pay over the appraisal price? So here's one of the things that happens in the multiple offers. It's listed at 125. We do an escalation up to 135. It appraises at 128. Okay. So you have to go back and renegotiate, right? Because the lender's not going to loan over 128, and that's what the seller is going to assume. But let's say I really want this house and I don't care what it appraises for. So if it appraises for 130 and I offered 135, I'm willing to pay that $5,000. If that's what your buyer says, then you can write that in the purchase agreement, and that's going to make your offer that much stronger. So you're willing to pay over appraisal. So I recognize that my escalation is probably over appraisal, and I'm willing to buy. 15 years ago when I bought my house, I wanted my house. I had wanted my house for 20 years. We had called it Mommy's house forever. And I bid 10 over, and I put in there that I would pay whatever it was over the appraisal. And it was a foreclosure, and I had to wait 3 days while other people looked at the house, and I drove by it, I don't know, maybe 60 times. I actually thought about, putting signs in the yard that somebody died in the house or something. we might have drank wine and all kinds of things. Because the waiting was like awful, because it was a Fannie Mae requirement at the time that it had to be on the market for 3 days before they would accept an offer, and it was painful. But it, I've also put a kitchen in my house that I could never get that money back out. It's my house, it's not like I'm not worried about the value. And sometimes you'll have, but how are you going to know if your buyer has that feeling about a house?
Ask.
You have to ask the questions. You have to say, hey, tell me this. If this were the case, do you have the cash and would you really be willing to do it? Because if it really is their dream home and they're not planning on moving for 20 years, you may think the appraisal matters and the lender may think the appraisal matters, but the appraisal may not matter to your buyer, but you don't know that unless you ask the question. So if you assume you could lose their house for them when it really was only going to cost them $3,000, which they were willing to pay, right? And are they willing to limit the dollar amount of requested inspection repairs? This is my favorite strategy, and you're going to see it in the offer that we're going to go through, and you're going to see it a little bit later on. And I've recommended it to several of you. So I have a conversation with my buyers and say, all right, one of the seller's big fears is that they're going to get an inspection report and then they're going to get this laundry list of 50 stupid things that they want repaired in the home, right? They're not going to follow the major defect language in the purchase agreement. So I write in my multiple offers that if the buyer's okay with it, and we talk about what this limit might be, 1,000, 3,000, 5,000, that we will not ask for any repairs or replacement of any items unless that single item is greater than 1,000, 3,000, or 5,000. That lets the seller know that you're not going to Mickey Mouse them on the inspection, and it also sets your offer most likely apart from everyone else's who's just going to put the standard stuff in. Does that make sense? Does anybody have questions on that strategy? Because I think that's like one of the biggest ones that'll get you a win. The next one that is the most important way you're going to get a win if they'll answer their phone is call the listing agent. Now, I find lots of listing agents don't want to talk to me in a multiple offer because it's a lot of work for the listing agent to get 8 offers, 10 offers, whatever. It's a lot of work. So they may not answer the phone. But if they answer the phone, what do you think you want to know from them?
I always ask what's important to the seller. Is it quick closing? Is it more they just need to get some more money out of it? They don't care about closing. What is it that they're really looking for? Their number one thing they want or something.
Exactly. So my question is always, other than price, which we all know is important, what does your seller need to see in an offer? Do they have any possession issues? Do they have, if it's a same day, let's say it's a same day close, right? Let's say that they're buying and selling on the very same day. Do you think that giving them 48 hours to move wouldn't be a little bit of a perk? Whether they tell you that it would be or not, but you have to have this conversation with your buyer. I don't like post-possession closing. I don't like my buyers to buy a house and then let somebody else live in it for 2 days. I'm not in control anymore. I can't do a final walk. My final walkthrough is already done. If the movers come in and put big gouges in the walls, we're going to have issues, right? But we really want the house. So what's more important, the post-closing issues and that's not my decision. It's the buyer's decision, right? So you have to ask the buyer questions. Most buyers in a multiple offer situation, I don't care, give them 2 weeks. I don't care, however long they need, put that, So if the listing agent won't talk to you, then you can make some flexible language in there and then when you make the offer, you're going to write an email, right, to go with the offer. And you can say, hey, we've made this really flexible because I wasn't able to talk to you, but I know that a lot of my sellers like to have a little bit of extra time to move. So we've built that in there in case they'd like to have that. Just right, friendly, nice, easy to work with. That's what you want the listing agent to know, right? You want them to know that you're going to be really easy to work with, that you're not going to make their life difficult, right? If they think that you're going to be difficult, are they going to recommend your buyer's offer to their client? Probably not. Always ask for confirmation, or I send it through DocuSign, and I make it one of the requirements needs to view. So that way when they view it, I get an email that they viewed it, and there's a record inside of DocuSign that they viewed it, so they actually received the offer. Because they couldn't have viewed it if they didn't receive it. You guys know how to do that in DocuSign? All right, well, we'll go through that here in a little bit. Because it really does, it makes your DocuSign a little cluttered because you're going to put this packet all together into one document as a PDF, and you're going to upload it into DocuSign, and and then you're gonna send it like you'd send it to sign, only it's gonna just say needs to view. So ask about an offer expiration deadline if you can talk to them before you put it in. Now, if they put in the agent to agent comments, best and final by 6 o'clock, right? I might give them till midnight that day, or I might give them till noon the next day. But if I'm not sure there's going to be multiple offers and I can't get a hold of the listing agent, I want to shorten that time, right? Because I want them to take my offer before other people get their offers in. So there's a fine balance there. So, you know, you are basically, you're going to have to guess and you're going to have to strategize a little bit if you can't talk to the listing agent. But if you can talk to the listing agent, just say, when are you planning to go through offers? What should I put in here for the expiration? I have had listing agents, I didn't enjoy this process, but I have had listing agents that have blown my expiration date, my expiration time. And I've had to go back and say, I can't get them to answer me. They haven't responded to our offer. I really don't know what the answer is. And then a day later got a call and said, all right, we picked your offer. Is your offer still valid? Do you still want it? And we had already started looking at other houses because they won't get back to me and they didn't respond to the offer. What else am I going to do? I think that's rude on the listing agent side, but you're not in control of that. So, so when you talk to the listing agent, you can share a little bit of personal information if your buyers agreed to that. You know, they really love this home. This is the perfect home for them. They love this neighborhood, whatever that might be. I mean, I wouldn't go too far into it. You know, they've looked at 30 homes and they really want this one, you know, whatever, but, you know, give them a little just to create a connection kind of thing. And then the last one's most important always, not just here, but be courteous and cordial to the listing agent, even if they're driving you nuts, because you want them to think that you're going to be easy to work with. All right, any questions on any of that? All right, so now we're going to talk about submitting the offer. So I put everything, just like a packet that I gave you, and I sent this to you in Google Drives too, but I put it all in one PDF. And the reason why I put it in one PDF is I had a very successful listing agent explain to me that in one of the classes that I took that he recommended you do this because he takes the letters out. He doesn't send the letters on to the sellers. So all he has to do is give them the offer, right? He doesn't. Well, nobody's going to take the time to pick apart my PDF, right? If I have an entire PDF, this is my theory. This is what he told me. So this is what I do. I put it all together and I start with a letter. So the letter will be on top, then the offer, then the purchase agreement, then the escalation clause, then your lender pre-approval letter. We're going to talk about another lender strategy here in a minute. A copy of the earnest money check. Okay. I recently had a multiple offer that I did not win. I did not win because it was cash offer. She told me this after the fact, right? It was, mine was the second best offer. The best offer was a cash offer. Out of state buyer. They called me. She called me 10 days later and asked me, did my buyers want to buy? Because they never sent their earnest money. Okay. We were already under contract on the property, so we didn't buy it. And she was kind of like, oh, gosh, I messed that up. No copy of the earnest money. So I have my buyers go ahead. If we decide it's going to be $2,000 in earnest money, I have them write the check. I have the check. I am in possession of this check. When I talk to the agent, when I submit the thing, I'll say, there's a copy of the earnest money check. I have the check. You know, now we don't have to worry. The listing agent doesn't have to worry that they're not going to get their earnest money, right? And we're not going to go through. And then sign disclosures. Don't make them ask you for anything. Get the seller's disclosure signed, the lead-based pay disclosure signed, include it with your packet. And then when you write your little, this is what Becky's talking about here, when you write your email that's submitting the offer to them, again, let them know about your buyer. Is it a friend of yours? Is it somebody a longtime client? Is it, you know, whatever it is that you can share with them, that they're pre-approved with Keller Mortgage, and Keller Mortgage is a streamlined process. This is going to be quick and easy, right? They're approved with a local, whatever. If it's first merchants. And if you have never worked with Tim, he is so easy to work with and he is great at communication. You know, something like that, just to give the listing agent an understanding that this is going to be easy. Again, that it's a family friend, or, you know, their family lives in the neighborhood and they really want to be close to their family. You know, whatever you can say in that email. All right. So you guys are looking at me like I'm crazy because it's not on the sheet here. So there's this part. That's what we were talking about. All right. So then we're going to set your offer apart from others. So you figure multiple offers, they're going to get lots of different versions of this. Jay can tell you some brokers teach different ways to fill out purchase agreements, right?
Yes.
So you want to set yours apart. You may be competing against another Keller Williams agent. You could be competing against one of the other agents in this room that just all heard and received the same information. Rhonda's asked me for this recording. So this recording is going to be in our training materials for the thing. So you may be competing with somebody else in the office as well. In the end, there's a limited amount of what you can do because you're constrained by what? You're constrained by the borrower's borrowing ability, the borrower's cash availability, right? If you have a cash offer, you know, you should win unless there's more than one cash offer, right? You should be good. So you're constrained by contingencies, you know, you're constrained by buyers who really can't buy and say that if it's a $5,000 repair that they'd still buy the house. You may not have that luxury, you know, you're constrained by those things, but you can still set yours apart. And again, she's got the as is on here and I'm not a fan, but she's a lot more successful than I am. So who am I to say? I probably wouldn't take that strategy just because I think that I have had other listing agents tell me they don't like as is addendum. So I think that if you opted to do the as is addendum, that there are probably as many listing agents out there that wouldn't like it that would. So I think the other option that she has on here, which is the one that I use, which is stating that you'll not ask for a greater number than X. I think that that's probably more likely to be successful. But watch, if the listing says that it requires, this is something important. If the listing says that it's as is only, then you absolutely need to include an as is addendum. They have told you specifically what they want. If you make an offer without an as is addendum in there, you didn't give them the offer that they wanted. You know, back to talking to the listing agent, we're going to talk about this again in a little bit. It's on my notes, but read the listing, right? Do not deviate from what they told you they want at all. So that's a big important one. And she has, if buyer asks for closing costs, write a clause in the further conditions stating that buyer will reduce the amount of closing costs asked for if the home does not appraise for sale price, as long as the buyer can really do that. So I have a situation right now. I'm the listing agent. Here, I'm just going to tell you this. This is just a fascinating one. It's a little bit off topic, but it's been interesting. It is a little bungalow over by the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It's a little bungalow and an extra lot. It's gorgeous. It's so cute. It's the first house I ever staged, and it's really adorable. I had it listed at 78. The FHA appraiser came in at 54. I suggested to the buyer's agent, that his client talk to Tim, right? Tim, he's the savior of all things for Carla right now, right? I called Tim. I said, here's the thing. There's two different kind of properties over by the Speedway. There's owner-occupied properties and there's investment properties. All the comps in the FHA appraisal was investment comps, not really comparable. The problem is the FHA appraisal exists. So if the buyer went to another lender and did another FHA, you know, that appraisal doesn't go away. We're stuck with that appraisal. It's always going to be 54, and we couldn't sell the house at 54. Tim, we just got the appraisal in this week. So the offer was 78 with $3,000 in closing cost help. Okay. The appraisal came in at 75 with Tim on a non-FHA, no down payment loan. So he was paying 5% down payment on an FHA or 3.5, whatever it was. Now he's paying no down payment. And so we split the difference with the closing cost help because he still needed a little help with closing costs. So now it's 75 or 1,500, which was a lot better than 54. So, that's where that creative thing comes in. But you do understand that, right? Once there's an FHA appraisal, even if it's a bad appraisal, it doesn't go away. It's stuck. It sticks to the property. I can't remember if it's 2 years or what. It's a really long time. So I'm sorry, that was a little side note. It was an ugly little story that's going to close next week. Thanks to Tim. And a very happy buyer and buyer's agent, right? Because now they didn't have to do a down payment. So it works out really well. So that's what this is saying. So here, the appraisal, we had a 78 offer with 3,000 in closing costs. The appraisal came in at 75. It's a $3,000 difference. So we basically just went ahead and agreed to $1,500 in seller concessions, just to get the deal done. And that's what this is suggesting. You could write that in. So if you do have a buyer that absolutely has to have closing cost help, right? No matter what, they cannot get approved with Keller Mortgage for some reason, and they absolutely need help with closing costs, just to maybe give yourself a chance in a multiple offer situation. You could agree that we're going to do this escalation and we need these concessions, but if the appraisal doesn't come back, we don't have the cash to give you. That first one we talked about, which is if it comes in at 130, I'll give you the extra 5, right? Here it would be, I can't give you the extra 5, but I would agree to like only 2,500 in closing costs, or 2,000 in closing costs instead of the 4 that I asked for or whatever. I don't really recommend asking for closing costs in a multiple offer because you're probably wasting your time with but sometimes you're going to write an offer and you don't know that there's going to be multiples, right? Like some properties surprise me that it's multiples. And sometimes I really think it's going to be a multiple. The one that I shared the offer with, we didn't win this one. The very next one, I made the same offer thinking it was going to be a multiple. We were the only offer. I don't know why. It's a great house. And it also appraised at 5 over what we offered on it. So I don't know why it didn't, but it did. The market's weird. Right?
Yeah.
Market's weird. All right. So then we're going to talk about the escalation clauses. So Becky and I both agree on this. So you'll see on that, I think it was listed at 167 and we offered 169. I always start my bid not at list price, right? So if the list price is 175, I'm going to talk to my buyer about offering 178 or 177 on the get-go, right? So picture this, you got 10 offers, right? I'm going to put them out in the thing, and I'm going to put them in order by who started higher. So most people write their offer at list. I'm writing my offer a little bit over list, right? So that's where this conversation about educating your buyers comes into play, right? You want to make sure that they understand that paying $1,000 over list price is $5 a month, right? With 4% interest rate.
So do you determine that based off of how many days it's been on the market, or does that even matter? So like my client, their thought process is, it's been on the market 31 days. Why would I offer full price? I go, well, in this market.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it's been on the market 31 days, the chances of it being a multiple offer is a little bit slimmer,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not going to try to, but what the real point is how bad do they want the house?
Yeah.
Because again, $1,000 is $5 a month. Is it worth $5 a month for you to get this house over somebody else who might offer list price? That's the question to ask. Because in the end, it's not your decision what you offer.
Yeah.
Right? It's just what you recommend. That's your decision. What you recommend, and then how you explain what you recommend. So the education that you give your buyer. That's a good question though. Because you'll get surprised 31 days on market and all of a sudden they have 4 offers, especially if they just drop the price.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another factor. There's lots of factors that could go into that. Do not, if you guys were on the call on Tuesday, you heard Becky say this. I have heard so many people say this. There are people who put in to be determined or no cap. No cap does not mean that they're going to pay $300,000 for a house listed at $150,000. That just means make me a counteroffer and we'll tell you if we like it or not. As the listing agent, that's more work, right? Why would you do that? That's more, why would you tell the listing agent I'm going to make you do more work? Now they're going to have to give you a counter offer, but they're assuming when they write that counter offer that it's just an automatic accept, right? That's the assumption. So if you look like you're playing games, they're not going to recommend your offer. They're going to say to their, what I would say to my buyers is I'm afraid that this buyer has an agent that likes to play games, and I don't know that we want to be involved in that because we're going to have to do this several times with them. We're going to have to negotiate after the inspection. We're going to have to potentially negotiate after the appraisal. And if we're starting off on this kind of foot and we've got 6 other really good offers, I think maybe we don't want to consider this one. And your seller's going to listen to you, right? So you don't want to be that person. So don't put that no cap in. Talk to them. It's like going to an auction. How many of you guys have ever been to an auction? Like a junk auction or an antique auction or whatever you call it. You get, or eBay, right? You get caught up in that moment of like, oh, just $1 more, just $1 more. And I always say, I have to figure out what my upper limit is before I ever start. And that's what we're asking our buyers here. What is your upper limit? What is the number so that if it's sold for $1,000 over that number, you would be okay with your decision? What is that number, right? And that number may be determined by the lender. It may be determined by the maximum amount they're pre-approved for if they don't have cash in the bank, right? Not very many people have a whole lot of cash sitting in the bank. But don't put no cap and don't play games. I mean, let them know this is the maximum amount we're willing to go to, because it's not always the highest. It's not always the highest that wins. And she puts on here, she recommends no less than $500 increments that it goes up, and that she likes 1,000. I like an odd number. I like it to be 750 or 1,100 or 1,005, right? Think about this. If everybody escalates to 180 in $1,000 increments and I escalate to 180 at 1,005, who wins? Or I escalate, up to 180 and 5, right? Or whatever, or 180, 50 or whatever, what, like pick a number that's a little bit different. I mean, really, you'd be all right if we paid $50 over this, right? You'd be good with that? If we ended up $50 over and that's what got you the house? I don't even know what the math is, 50 over 30 years, 4% interest, but imagine it's pretty negligible on your purchase price if 1,000 is $5, right? And then including letter with a photo, and we're going to go through that strategy a little bit more in detail because I like that one a lot. And I start my buyers writing that letter right after our buyer consultation. And we start really working on that letter and making it look nice. And you're going to see some examples that I've probably given a lot of them to you. I have had some creative clients that have done some really cute things. All right. So then those are Becky's tips. And those I would put a lot of emphasis on. Think again, she is a rock star listing agent who has handled so many of these from the listing side. So she knows exactly what she's seeing and how her sellers are making decisions. And so that is what she's just given you. I have some additional tips. So if you can, and this really comes down to a relationship with the lender, either your relationship with the lender or your buyer's relationship with the lender, but see if the loan officer will write a personal letter in addition to your pre-approval letter. And there's some examples. There's an example in the packet that I gave you. And when we go through the packet, you'll see it. And there's also, I think I put in the Google Drive another example. This was an accident that, gosh, Tim should be here this week. This was an accident. This happened one time. This was not part of a strategy that anybody gave me. What happened was, I had a buyer that really, really wanted to buy a house, so much so that we made a ridiculous offer. And when they countered it, they countered below what our opening bid was because they knew it wasn't going to appraise for what she wanted to pay because she wanted this house really bad. And so Tim wrote a letter in addition to the standard pre-approval letter that she was the most organized and highest qualified borrower that he had worked with in a really long time. And the RE/MAX agent that was the listing agent told me that that they had 9 offers and we all escalated to the same number. And the reason why they picked ours was because of that letter. Because if the loan officer would write a letter for the borrower, they were pretty sure this was going to be a good transaction. And so, lesson to me, now all the lenders in the meeting, when I have that conversation at the very end, I said, well, here's something I got to tell you, is that, this is a very competitive market and we're having to write multiple offers. Can you write a personal recommendation letter for this borrower for me? Because if you can do that, that's great. If you can't, I'm probably going to ask her to go get pre-approved with another lender that will write that kind of letter for me. And I haven't had anybody tell me no yet. So it's just that one little extra thing. No other packets are gonna, maybe now, I'm telling this, so now it's gonna be out there, but there's still the likelihood is that nobody else is gonna have that extra little gift right in there. And that letter could not only talk about the borrower, it could talk about the lender's process, right? We have a really streamlined process. We can get these done in 30 days, whatever that could be, that anything that the loan officer can share that makes that a little bit helpful. We've already talked about this, scanning all the documents into a one PDF so that you have a better chance that the buyer actually sees everything that you put together. Up your earnest money. So we all know earnest money is typically what? 1%. Make it something else. That's the insurance policy to the seller that you're going to go through with it. Explain to your buyers, this is not a big deal. You're just paying the money now instead of in 30 days. This is going to go towards your down payment, right? It's not a big deal. You want to buy this house. You're not going to walk away from it, do anything crazy, silly. If there's a major defect that comes up on the inspection, you're still going to get your earnest money back, right? So up it, if it should be $1,500, make it $2,000 or $2,500, something that stands out from what everybody else does, which is the standard. And then coach your buyer on writing their letter. And I start, like I mentioned, in my initial buyer's consultation. I've had this little girl here that wrote this letter. The first house she bought a year ago that she paid $114 for at a multiple. And then we just sold it for like $145 and she's buying another property. She's 23 years old. Single mom, 23 years old. She's one of my favorite clients. I'm just so impressed with her. But she wrote a letter for the first one. The listing agent told me that we were not the highest, but they liked her letter and they liked the pictures of her little baby girl. And they had built the house and lived in it for 50 years. And so she was the second owner of that home. And I've given you some caution here. So do you guys remember, can a seller pick the person that they're going to sell to simply because it's a family? Does that violate any? Is it not a protected class? So I coach my clients, my buyers, to not focus. Sure, if they're introducing themselves. If they're a family, they're a family. If they're a single mom, they're a single mom. Introduce yourself, that's no problem. Put a picture, obviously, of your family, that's no problem. But get them other reasons to pick you other than just that. So walk around the house, look for clues. Is it super well maintained? I walked through a house with a buyer once. Then it was really clear that what had happened there is that the husband had passed away and the wife, and they had lived in the house for a long time because it was dated, right? So they had lived in the house for a long time. all the mechanicals had sticky notes on it that said when they needed to be serviced and how they needed to be serviced. Before he died, I'm gonna cry because every time I tell this story, it breaks my heart. But he had gone around and he had marked every one of the mechanicals about when you had to change the filters or whatever. So when we wrote the letter to her, it was all about how well meticulously maintained this house was and how we could not find a house that was better cared for. And we won that one, and the listing agent told me that that made her feel so good because her husband had taken such good care of the house, and we honored that in our letter, and so we won. I know that sounds manipulative, but it's not. It made her feel good. So maybe it is manipulative, but it had a good purpose, right? Everybody worked out good, and walk around the house. Look, if the decor is impeccable, looks like Better Homes and Gardens spread, write that in the letter. Don't you suppose that the person that decorated it, either they did it themselves or they paid somebody to do it, would be appreciate the compliment? And it may not be, I'm going to sell because of this, but if it comes down to two and you made them feel good and somebody else didn't, right? Plus you've protected yourself because it wasn't just all about we're a family. So, another one that we did once is the garage had just lines of fishing rods. Like there was, I didn't even know they made that many different fishing. I mean, I don't know if they all did something different, or I even asked my client, different fish need different fishing rods? Why would you have this many fishing rods? And there was a pond out back, right? And so when they wrote the letter, I said, well, you guys like to fish. You want to take your son out to fish? Talk about fishing in the pond. Sure enough, I didn't have that conversation, so I don't know that that's why we won that bid. But if you really like to fish and somebody says they're going to go fish in the pond, wouldn't that make you want them to live in the house, right? If you sell your house, chances are you want somebody that's going to take care of it and love it. And that's what you want to let them know, is that you're going to take care of their home and you're going to love it.
I have a quick question. So I do this with each one of my clients, and this last one was a relocation owned the house at this point. Do you still recommend doing all this? Because the offer goes to a relocation. So I said, yeah. I said, you never know. That person that works there may have
Well, what if,
I don't know. I would say, why not?
Well, not only that, but let's say that they get 4 offers and 3 of them are all the same, and yours has a letter. You've just given one thing different about your packet than everybody else's.
That's what I said to my client. She's like, well, it's not going to really matter, so we don't really care. I'm like, it will. It may.
But the thing is that I have them write their letter. I have them write the shell of their letter. That's my first homework assignment to my buyers. Just like my sellers get the seller's disclosure, and that's their homework assignment. After pre-approval, I have them start writing their letter. Just start writing the part, this is about me, and this is, whatever, to start the shell of it. So again, where I'm showing the house at 2:00 and we have best and final by 4, they've got to go back and write this letter. You don't want them to throw something together. Let's work on it. Plus they're excited, right? They want to buy a house, and I want them to be engaged in this process and be thinking about the multiple offer process from the get-go. I want them to be an active participant in it. So get them to start writing it. Then it's not a big deal to write the letter. Have a generic letter that doesn't say anything about the house. At least put something in.
Yeah.
That would be my recommendation. Again,
That
it's
was mine.
it's the buyer's offer. So if they really, I've had a couple guys that really didn't want to write a letter. I had one guy, I wrote the letter for him. He asked me to. He had puppies. That's the other thing. Oh my gosh, if you see puppies or kitties in the house, signs of puppies or kitties in the house, and you have a puppy or kitty, put a picture of the puppy or kitty. Pet owners are crazy people. Ask me, I have 4 cats, right? And my daughter is adopting a new puppy, and she did a video that has the family matters, and she introduced every member of the family, including her 2 cats and her existing dog, and sent it to the rescue to get them. She has her meet and greet tomorrow with my new grandpuppy. See, people with pets are stupid.
Yeah,
So put pictures of pets
We
on
are.
here. Do not miss that. Don't miss that opportunity. Like, even if you see signs of dogs and you have a cat, put a picture of the cat on there. People who like dogs also usually like cats. They may not want to own them, but they still like them. Hunter. I had another one. He was a hunter, and there was a man cave that had all these, and they put something absolutely hilarious in that letter, something like, I know my wife would never let me have all of those. I'm so jealous. Just something like that, just to create a relationship on paper with a letter. So there's lots of different ways. And you can walk around the house while they're walking around the house, like dissecting if this is the house that they want. Walk around the house and look for clues. Look at pictures. People have pictures that give you clues into their world. How can you create a relationship and a connection in a letter? And then this is most important, like very, very important. This is all very important, but consider the seller's needs. We talked about talking to the listing agent, but read the agent-to-agent comments. If they need something and the listing agent won't call you, they're going to put instructions for you in the agent-to-agent comments. Don't skip those, right? If they say that they need 5 days post-possession, don't write possession at closing in your offer. You're going to lose, right? Because you didn't meet their needs. If they put in that, I'm trying to think of something else they might put in there. But if they put in there that they're going to meet with it's an estate and they're going to meet with the family on Wednesday at noon, don't put a deadline of Monday at 6, right? That's like, you're just creating extra work. Read the instructions read the instructions, whatever they told you.
I didn't, on my other relocation thing, I actually went ahead, they had all the instructions on there. I went ahead and called the agent, and she said, yes, these are all the requirements, but they will do a verbal acceptance if it's on the weekend. So, and I didn't know that because I was thinking I had to wait till Monday, and I'm glad, we didn't end up not doing it, but I'm glad I called. So even though the instructions are there, I still call and talk to them and make sure, because that could get me ahead of somebody else.
Well, you always want to call. I mean, there is no reason not to call. But what I'm saying is sometimes they aren't going to call you back. I mean, they're not going to answer the phone and they are going to call you back because they've already had 14 calls, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't have time for this. They're Becky. They have 27 pendings. They do not have time to take your call to help you write your offer. They've already put it in the agent to agent. They're not even going to bother. So just make sure you cover your bases and do all of those things. And if you can't, I talked about this earlier. I did this again. I can't remember to scoot down. But if you can't get them to take your call, and they didn't put any agent-to-agent comments in there, so then make your offer as flexible as you can, and then in your email, again, say, we will do whatever it is that your seller needs. I tried to reach you. I know you probably had a million phone calls. I didn't see anything in the agent to agent, but if you need possession after closing, or if you need a specific closing date, or whatever I can do to make this better, just let me know. We're very flexible. That's the message that you want to get along. And easy to work with. So we talked about this. Talk to your lender to know exactly how much time will be needed to close. So if your lender can close in 30 days and they didn't have a specific date in there that they needed to close by, then make it 30 days or 35 days. You've got, when we go through the offer, remember you've got some room in there because it's a date or 2 days after closing disclosure. So you've got a little bit of window there, but what you're telling the seller is that you're ready to go, right? We're not going to drag this out forever. We're ready to go. Shorten all the contingency periods, and we're going to go through that when we go through the offer. But talk to the inspector. Have your buyers decide who are you going to use for your inspection, right? Talk to the inspector. How quick can you get out? That don't make it 14 days for an inspection. If your inspector can get out in 5 days, make it 7 days. Shorten that contingent period, because that's the time frame that the seller is hanging on, like, oh gosh, is there going to be an issue with the inspection, right? Shorten that up. Make that as quick as possible so that they know if this deal falls through, they're going to be able to get one of the other people, that made an offer or get it back on the market. We'll go through this again in the offer when we go through it, but there's some other contingencies in there for building use, HOAs, floodplain, insurance contingencies. Make them as short as possible or not at all. Like, take them off the table if they're not an issue. I mean, if it's a house and they intend to live in it, there's no reason to have a building use contingency, right? It's a house, they can live in it. Don't ask the seller to pay for anything additional, no closing costs, no survey, no home warranty, no lender's policy. if your buyer is capable. And, you know, again, this goes back to your buyer, but these are recommendations for your buyer. Check the listing. If they didn't include the washer and dryer, don't ask for the washer and dryer, right? They don't, they may have a sentimental attachment to their washer and dryer. Don't make them have to give that to you. They're not going to pick you. So, and then the next bit of advice here before we go into it is just reminding you that it's your job to keep your buyers, to help your buyers keep their perspective. So is there any questions on what we just did before we go into talking about your buyers? And then we'll actually go through the packet. We're good? How am I doing on time? Speed up. All right. As a real estate agent, you have to be the objective voice. You have to help your buyers understand. There is no way any buyer is going to be able to wrap, right? You've been in the situation and you were even in the middle of getting your license. Multiple offer situation, and while it's frustrating for us, it is confusing for the buyers. And it's upsetting, and they worry about things that you have to help them not worry about, like we talked about earlier. Well, they only have it listed at 178. Why are we offering 180? I don't want to pay more for it than what it's worth, right? You need to have those conversations and help them understand. Here's where I did the math for you. $1,000 at a 4% interest with a 30-year mortgage is $5 a month in monthly payments, right? So when they say, I don't want to go to 125, you say, you really? I think it's probably going to go 125. So you do understand that like $1,000 is only $5 extra a month. I just want to make sure you can offer anything that you want, but I just want to make sure you understand that's $5. Do you want to lose the house for $5? But then you also have to make sure that they understand that cash is usually king. And so the best offer, we can write the very, very best offer that there is to write, and we can still lose because cash will probably beat us. And that's an unfortunate thing. And then it's your job to make sure that this offer packet that we're going to go through now is as neat, organized, and includes everything. You have to make sure you have it put together right. So the offer packet, you guys all have one. So here are the things, by the way, that this is the Google Drive that I just shared with all you guys. So that sheet, which was Becky's tips, and then my little extra things that I added are there. There's if you guys have my, you guys all have my buyer's guide, and in my buyer's guide, there is the personal letter examples, but there's 4 on one page and they're a little small. So these are actually bigger ones of those, this full size that are in here. And then this is this is what is in my buyer's packet that it's branded to me. And so this is something that you can put in your buyer's packet that is, it walks through the highlights of these things for your buyers. So that tells you, this helps you walk through this process with your buyers at your buyer consultation. You put it in your buyer packet, your buyer consultation. So it's here for you. And then so then this is where we are. So this first one is just the letter, right? So I always start the packet with the letter. And then I struggle with this. Sometimes the buyers write a letter and I want to change it. And sometimes I'll ask permission. Can I make a couple little tweaks on this? And sometimes it just, you know, it's their letter, not my letter, but that's challenging sometimes. But so the purchase agreement, so the important things to remember here, I already told you this, but right here, I put on here, be sure to only list the appliances in the BLC. And you guys know, do not put per the BLC here, right? Because that's not valid. That's not valid contract language. Jay, are you laughing at me? Is that something that you did?
Yes, that's very fun.
Oh, okay.
That's all I've been putting in. Per contract dated this.
Yeah.
But I wasn't putting it on there, and he was like, you need to put this on there.
Yeah, just copy and paste it, right? Just copy and paste it, it's fine. Then it's part of the legal contract. So then here, maybe more than list. So whatever the purchase price is, you'll see this one. If you go to the very back, I gave you the redacted BLC here. 167.5 is what it was listed for. We offered 169. There's the earnest money, include a copy with the packet, make it more than 1% and make it quick. Right? We can get it to you really quick. You guys have heard my thing about how much I hate days and I always use hours. I grew up in a law firm. 3 days, it ends when? 24 hours ends at a definite date, right? A definite time. So I always use hours, never days. That's just, I worked for attorneys for too long. I recommend on the mortgage piece here that you put best available and not a number here. You guys know why? What does that say to the seller?
Because it can change.
It can change, right? And what if something stupid happens today? It's 3.5, and I put 4 in there, and you know, something happens on Monday, and all of a sudden it's 4.5. This gives them. This is the most flexible you could be is best available. Again, check with the lender on F and make sure that you've put in here whatever the lender tells you. Tell the lender I need to know that I need to know what the shortest amount of time is. Can we get approval in 30 days? You know, tell my buyer, you got to make application. How quickly can you get everything? Because making application involves signing the documents and getting them anything else that you hadn't, if you still didn't have your W-2s yet or whatever you haven't given them yet. Can you get that done? 5 days, 3 days, 2 days? What's the quickest you can get that done? You want to make that as short as possible. The fee, the closing fee, you know what, it's $500, right? Pay it, share it equally, but don't make the seller pay it. I mean, if you put on here that the seller has to pay it and somebody else put on there that they would pay it, it's $500, $250 for half, right? You're going to lose a deal over $500 or $250. So this isn't where you're trying to, you know, be tricky. Here I had to wipe this one out because this one was the one I told you she had to sell. We were on the market, and that's why we didn't win this one, but you really want that top box if at all possible. Next best thing is the second box, which is you already have an offer and you're waiting to close. And the one that's never going to win in a multiple offer situation is the third one. So I recommend not even trying that. So really, except for you're assuming that they're going to have multiple offers. They may not actually get multiple offers. So you could still go ahead and write it. Once you've written one of these for what this, right? Once you've written one for a buyer and you've lost a few times, it's really easy to write the third and fourth and fifth one, right? It doesn't take much time for you to do it. So at that point, it's like, all right, let's just try it. You know, I'll do anything for you. Just know I don't want to make that phone call. Possession, you know, we talked about this, check with the listing agent. And make sure it's at closing. I took a class once and there was a huge discussion about these two numbers here. The first number is probably should be 0 here because the first number says that, and I didn't have to worry about it because they had it in their thing that they were going to be out of closing. So I didn't change my form, but that probably should say 0. Write that, make a note on yours that should say 0 up there on the first one, because that's if you're giving post-possession closing, how much they have to give you back for that post-possession closing, and that should be 0. So that's a mistake here. But the second one, definitely make that a good number. I mean, that's your buyer's protection that they're not going to overstay their welcome and 30 days later still be in the house, right? So you still want that number in there because that's protecting your buyer. The survey, if your buyer really needs a survey or if there's something that looks really concerning, you know, it looks like there might be a shed. Well, if it looks like the shed or the fence is maybe not where it should be, or they are planning on building a garage in the backyard, and it's really important to them that they be able to build a garage in the backyard, something like that. If it's just that they'd really kind of like to know, you don't have to get a survey at closing. You can get a survey. I can call somebody to have a survey done at my house right now, right? So you don't really have to. But if you do, don't make the seller pay for it. That's all that matters here. If you really want the title company to order a survey, just don't make the seller pay for it. Flood area. Look it up. Is it in a floodplain? You know, have that conversation. If you are concerned, you know, go ahead and mark May. But if you're not concerned at all, it's sitting high up on a hill, there's no way, don't mark May. That's just another contingency. Just take that off as it may not. Building use limitations, we talked about that. It's a house, they're gonna live in it as a house. Why would you set a contingency here? Just make it no. If for some reason you're writing multiple offers for investors though, and you're in a neighborhood and they're concerned, and they're in a neighborhood, and the neighborhood, the HOA documents, when you look at it, says that only a certain percentage of homes in the neighborhood can be a rental. And you have to do this on the fly. Well, there you're gonna need to put May there, right? And you're gonna make that as short as possible. How long is it gonna take you to get with the HOA and find out what the percentage is and if we're gonna be able to rent in here, right? That's about the only time I think that you would actually have that.
I had a
in there.
situation, my previous buyers, they have a home-based business. In addition to, they have regular careers. And so we had to check May on there. And when we got the HOA documents, found out that they couldn't run a business out of their house. So we had to terminate it.
I recommend not waiting to find the HOA documents. Go to Chicago Title, or Title Alliance is working on getting them up for us, but you can always go to Chicago Title, CCRs, just Google it. I don't know what the website is, but if you type Indianapolis, Chicago Title, CCRs, you'll get a whole list. It may not be the most recent one, and so you still want to go check with the HOA after the fact, but you can go through the first one and see and just get that off the table. But if you do have to put that in there, just make it a small number, right? Again, that's telling the seller, I'm not 100% sure I'm ready to buy. That's what that says, right? It doesn't say I'm ready to go. It says, I think I'm ready to go, but I might have a problem. Homeowners insurance, same thing. Only reason you're not gonna be able to get homeowners insurance that I know of is a meth house, and I clear every house that I write an offer on the meth list just to make sure it's not there. If it's in some neighborhoods, I check it before I even go see it because I don't really want to go see it if it's a meth house. The only other reason is if it's had an excessive amount of claims that I know of. I've never had it happen. I've never talked to anybody that's ever had it happen, but I've talked to a couple insurance agents just so I could explain this to my buyers and sellers. And that's the reason why is it's, you know, it's had 15 claims in the last 3 years and it makes the house uninsurable. But make it really short. It doesn't take much to call the insurance agent and make sure here's the address, is this property insurable? Make it a day if you have to make it a day. 5, whatever. All right, so then the inspection. There's not very many things I would say never. But since I said I was never getting married and then I got married, there's not very many things I could ever really say never to, but I will never recommend that my buyer not get an inspection. I even recently had one where the seller did a pre-listing inspection and provided us with the pre-listing inspection and a list of the repairs that they had made. And I said, you know, you don't have to get a full inspection here, but I would definitely recommend that you have the inspector come out and look at these repairs. So I'm not ever going to recommend that they don't get an inspection. They may decide they don't want to. I've had a couple cases like that. I make them put that in writing and sign it, that I recommended that they got an inspection and that they chose not to. Just to protect me and the brokerage. But so this is the way mine will always look. They reserve the right, talk to the inspector, find out how quick can you get out. I got a multiple offer situation. I need to make this contingent as short as possible. I can be out tomorrow. Okay, I might make it 3 days then, right? I can be out in a week. I'm going to make it 10 days, right? I'm going to give myself time in case something happens that we can still get the inspection done. But I'm going to make that number as short as possible. Home warranty, again, it doesn't even have to be in here. If they want a home warranty and they're paying for it, they can buy it at any time. It doesn't have to be in the purchase agreement. So I just recommend having that will not. But if they do want a home warranty, just let them know they can't make the seller pay for that and win in a multiple offer situation. So,
So that don't have to have that in the contract at all? It doesn't hold any kind of.
Not if the buyer's going to pay for it. A buyer can buy, I can buy a home and warranty on my house right now. So it doesn't have to, the only reason it needs to be in here is if it's going to be paid for at closing. And really Title Alliance, if you get them an invoice and it's not in here, they'll still include it at closing. It'll be all right. So this is really important if the seller is paying for it in another world or a different house, not a multiple offer house. Again, the disclosures, make sure you have them and they're signed and they're in your packet. Do not make the listing agent chase you up for these. That's not good. You do understand that it's not actually a contract if you haven't sent that back, right? So that is a best practices always, not just in multiple offers. That is an always best practice. That sets the tone for how the rest of the transaction is going to go, that you're going to follow along and do your job, basically. Owner's title insurance policy. I usually have the seller go ahead and pay for that. They may have a prior policy, they may be getting a discount. But if you're really worried and you really want to set your offer apart, have the buyer pay for it. You know, you can look at the Title Alliance disclosure and see what the amount is, and it'll tell you pretty much what that's going to cost your buyer if you want to have that conversation. Lender's title insurance policy, the buyer should be paying that. You know, this is a multiple offer situation. You're not having the seller pay your closing costs. If they can't and they really need the help, then they're probably not going to win in the multiple offer situation, but you just need to make sure the buyer understands that. I love Title Alliance, and I do not like to close properties with any other title company. But if I'm representing a buyer, I am going to let the seller, I'm going to let the listing agent choose the title company. It's just one more way to say, hey, you're in the driver's seat and I'm going to help any way I can, but I'm going to be easy to work with. So I do not, this is the only time where I do not ask for Title Alliance to be my title company. Taxes is no different than any other time. The homeowners association documents we just talked about, review them ahead of time. And make that as short as possible. All you have to do is call the HOA and ask for them. You don't make the listing agent get them for you. You know, you want to get this deal done. And when any contingent, if you do win the multiple offer or any time you're doing transaction coordinating, when that contingent is come and gone, send an email and say, hey, I got the HOA documents. We're all good. There's no issue. To the listing agent, let them know that that contingency has passed by and they can mark it off their list. I don't think there's anything else other than further conditions. So you're going to put on the further conditions that the addendum to the purchase agreement escalation clause is attached and included in the purchase agreement, right? You're going to put that because that's where you list any addenda. And then this is where I add, buyer agrees to limit any items on inspection response to only major items require repair or replacement in excess of $3,000. And then I even, you know, like say it a second way just to make sure. An attorney taught a class and gave me that language, so I just copied it. And then this one that I've added and highlighted in yellow down there, that's obviously you're going to check with the buyer before you do this, and you're going to make sure the buyer knows what they're agreeing to when you do this. But this was Becky's recommendation, that the buyer agrees to pay additional down payment, the difference between the purchase price and the appraisal. So that's back to, you know, we offered 128, it appraises at 125, but we're going to go ahead and pay 128. We're going to pay the $3,000 difference. Expiration of offer, again, check with the listing agent, or be very reasonable. All right, so then we have the addendum to the escalation clause. So this is, remember up here we talked about 500 or 1,000 is Becky's recommendation. My recommendation is some other number, 600, 1,050, pick a number, something different, be different than everybody else. And the cap, be sure you put a number there. Do not put to be determined or no cap. And then, I mean, really don't put no cap there and then put the thing that your buyer is going to pay the difference. I mean, really don't do that. Not good. Here are your three choices. Do you guys understand these three choices? First choice, the loan amount provided for in this purchase agreement will remain the same, and the buyer will pay any increase in the cash at the time of closing. So this is pretty much the same thing as that language that we put in the further conditions that says that if we make it 175 and it appraises at 170, we are going to pay the difference. The reason why I also put it in further conditions is because there is a mortgage clause in the purchase agreement, and this doesn't specifically and purposefully override the mortgage clause, or the appraisal clause, I mean. So that's what that one is. I guess there's 4 choices. The second one is the down payment amount provided for this purchase agreement shall remain the same, and any increase shall be added to the loan amount. The next one is a loan amount provided for in this purchase agreement shall automatically increase to be 90% of the new purchase price. Like right there, they can only put 10% down. They don't have any extra money. That's what that one says. And the loan amount should not exceed whatever that is. So if if we're only pre-approved to 190 and they're offering 205 in an escalation, that, you know, the loan amount will not exceed what they're pre-approved for. So you just pick one of those, whatever one applies to your situation. Obviously, the first one is the seller's preference, right? But the other 2 may be required, the other 3 might be required based on whatever your buyer's thing is. The rest of the packet, did you like my lovely sketch of a copy of an earnest money? Because I really didn't want to make a copy of my client's check here, and I'd already done enough redacting for the evening last night. Here is the personal recommendation by the loan officer. I put that in before the pre-approval letter, okay? And then there is the pre-approval letter. And then there's the seller's disclosure and the lead-based paint disclosure. And then I always include the VLC sheet with my offers. So that way, if something changes, I have a most recent copy at the time of the purchase. All right, what questions do you have? Is this helpful? Do you feel armed and ready to go win all the multiple offers? Because we go back to where we started in the very beginning, and you're going to be calling all your people and telling them about this fabulous program that you have with Tim, and 90% of those are going to be multiple offer situations, because you're going to have first-time home buyers that are buying in the 150 range. You know, those are all, this was necessary to go with your no down payment loan calls, because you had to be equipped to handle them. So do you have any questions? Who has any concerns about this? Is this what you've been, oh, you got a funny smile on your face. Jay, you worry me so much.
I'm just trying to think of stuff, you know, and presenting just a regular offer so I come in strong like it's every time.
Well, you know, I always try to make my offers as strong as my buyer is willing, but it depends on my buyer motivation. Here, my buyer's motivation is to win in a multiple offer situation, right? So my buyer's motivation isn't to save money. It can't be. You can't win in a multiple offer situation and have your motivation be to save money. They just don't go hand in hand. So if you represent an investor and they don't want to pay for anything out of pocket, if you represent a buyer and they don't have any cash, right? They can't cover closing costs, and they can't cover all those things. So you have to remember that every offer that you write is your buyer's offer. It's not your offer. And your job is only to advise them to make the best offer that they can possibly make, given their own criteria. So I tried on that purchase agreement, and that's my standard purchase agreement. It's just that I usually give myself a little bit more time. Inspections, I usually have 15 days in there. And, you know, I usually give a little bit of breathing room, so we're not like, right? Because unlike Brian, I do my own. Brian's the only one in this room that has the luxury of not have to worry about these really short. Yeah, I don't know. He might have to worry about it too. They would come back to him and say, "Why are you putting all of these short deadlines in here? I'm going to strangle you." Tell him it's my fault.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I mean, you got to transaction coordinate, so you have to be smart about it. And if you're not in a multiple offer situation, there's no reason to put a 5-day inspection period in there. I mean, that's just really, you know, these are just little tips that you can do. So yeah, absolutely. You always want to make the strongest offer you possibly can. but again, your job is to educate the buyer on what's important. Some of these tips though about being easy to work with and always including all the documents, the offer packet, every one of my offer packets look this way. I always include a copy of my earnest money. I don't want to write an offer and then have my buyers not be able to give me the earnest money check. It also allows me to do one thing. So you know that the lender is going to need to have a copy of the earnest money and is going to have to be able to trace it coming out of the bank account, right? So I had early on an issue where we almost lost a deal. We did manage to save it at the end, but they paid their earnest money with a money order and couldn't show how that money came out of their account because it didn't come out of their account. Somebody gave it to them, and it's the whole thing. This way I circumvent all those problems, right? Because I have the earnest money. I've already had that conversation. If they're going to get a money order, I've always said, all right, how are you getting the money order? Like, are you going to get the money out of the bank? You need to make sure when you give me the copy of the money order, you also give me a copy of the receipt from the bank that you withdrew the money from. So we don't have any surprises down the road. So a lot of this is best practice, but a lot of it is just making it just a little bit more concise. How does this look for how does this look for the one that you almost won? You won and lost.
Sadly, every single thing on here we did and still didn't get it. And that comes down to what the seller ultimately changed their mind on.
In the end, and that's why that's why I didn't want to leave the education of your buyer out of this conversation, because they have to know that. Tell your buyers that war story. Tell your buyers, you know what? Sometimes we can write the best offer and it can be absolutely bulletproof. We cannot overcome cash usually. And sometimes it's just a personal thing. I tell them the story about my buyer and the daughter. She was not the highest. We did not have the best offer and we won because they liked her letter. They had a better story. They connected with her. I mean, go back to spend some time on that letter. That letter is important because if you can find a way to connect, it's the first thing in the packet. They're going to forward your packet to the buyer or to the seller to look at, and they're going to read that letter. If they connect, then everything else is easier, right? If you make a connection. So don't overlook the letter. Don't just say write a letter and then don't coach them on it. Help them know. They don't know what to write in a letter. Help them coach them on the letter. When you're in the house, say, hey, when you write your letter, check this out. Make sure you put something about this in your letter.
When doing the contingency, I might have a couple of them that there might come an issue.
Where they have to sell and buy?
Yes. So how far along should I get them to be in a buying process or selling process first?
Well,
before I initiate the other part of the process. So
yeah.
they don't either be homeless or miss out on the deal.
They need to start having some serious discussions. If they're truly going to be in a multiple offer market, they need to start thinking about their friend's basement or an Airbnb or some type of alternate housing in the in-between, because chances are to win in a multiple offer scenario, they're going to have to close on their house.
So should I just tell them, let's close first? Someone said it, you should close first before you.
Well, you absolutely, in a perfect world, you're close first. If they can't, they can't. Then you're just going to have to try to work it around the other way and hope that you hit some house that isn't multiple offer. Get the house under contract, or if they have equity, talk to Tim or Union Savings Bank about a blanket or bridge loan where they could buy and then sell. Because then there's no contingency, right? They don't have to sell their home to buy, so they can buy and then sell. Those are the two best scenarios. They sell and they're homeless, and then they can buy, or they have a bridge or blanket loan, and then they can carry both for a month or two. On the sell side, another strategy is so the house that we're getting ready to close on August 3rd, let that one was, the reason I think there wasn't multiple offers on that one is that it was listed as contingent on the seller's finding suitable home. So we originally had the closing date of like September 15th. I made that as far out as possible, wanting to give them as much time as possible to be able to find their house. And we're closing on August 3rd. They found another house. But you know, that's another option. Go ahead and list their house and make it conditioned on them finding suitable home. And that way they don't end up homeless. They just might take a while to sell their house because they're going to have to find a non-multiple offer situation. It's hard. The inventory issue is definitely a challenge. Was this helpful?
Very.
All right, so you should all have that Google Drive, and I think I made it so that you can't edit it this time, so you'll just have to make a copy of it if you need to use it. If it doesn't work, let me know. I'm still working on the technology. Anybody got big plans for the weekend?
My sister is on her way here now from Illinois. So my nephew's birthday is today, so we're in the lake and celebrating birthday.
Very nice. Did you guys like commit to the number of calls you're gonna make next week about the first time home buyer program, the no down payment program? Set a goal for yourself. It's your goal. Set it, email it to me if you want to. I'd love to see what your goal is so that I can check with you on Friday and see how it went. How many people do you want to talk to every day? That's your lead gen. You know, you've got to have these conversations. If you guys all made 5 calls next week, you should each at least have 1 appointment by the end of the week. There's no reason why you wouldn't, except for that you didn't make the call or you didn't ask for the appointment. Would somebody do me a favor and hang out with me if you can for 30 minutes to help my test takers come in upstairs?
Would I have to be in Carmel? I would absolutely do it again because it wasn't.
Can you hang out with me for 30 minutes? I mean, we can cover in that 30 minutes anything that you want to cover. I just can't logistically get people in and down through the basement. It's a maze.
It is. Everyone I brought down last week, well, this is a maze. I'm like, yes, it is.
Poor Mike. Mike was in last week, the day that the COVID situation happened here at the office. And he was trying to go out through Shauna's office because he was so confused about where he was. And, you know, it's like, it is. It took me like 3 months to find my way.
First when they brought me down, I'm like, I'll never figure out how to get back up.
Well, enjoy the lake. It's going to be a beautiful day for that, yeah?
Yes.
Everybody else have something fun to do? No fun?
Lead generation.
Lead generate. That's fun stuff. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yep.